Hi everyone, welcome to AP Psychology discussion. My name is Zihao, and this video is brought to you by Vertex Tutors. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more content in the future. For today, we're going to be discussing the 2014 AP Psychology FRQ question 1. So without further ado, let's read the question. The question states, in a study of power and self-image, participants were not told the true purpose of the study. Instead, they believed that they were participating in a business simulation. Researchers randomly assigned participants to a high power N44 or low power N44 condition. In a high power condition, participants recalled a time when they had power over others. And in the low power condition, they recalled a time when others had power over them. Participants were asked to adjust the height in centimeters of an electronic graphical image and avatar of themselves to reflect their personal appearance. Results indicated a statistically significant difference in participants' perceptions of their own height across the two conditions. Participants in the high power conditions created taller self-images, mean of 6 and standard deviation of 1.5, than participants in the lower power condition, mean of 4 and standard deviation of 1. So the important parts of this question that we should highlight or circle on your piece of paper is that the participants were not told the true purpose of the study. That's going to be really important as we answer the questions below. And then we're going to highlight that researchers randomly assigned participants to high power or low power conditions. Then it gives some detail on what the participants were asked to do, which were to adjust the height in centimeter of an electrical graphical image. And then it gives us results, right? So the results of a mean of 6 and standard deviation of 5 for high power conditions. And then this statistic for low power conditions. So now let's go on to answering the first question. So the first bullet point asks, describe the levels of the independent variable. So from our studies, we know that the independent variable is the variable that is purposely manipulated by the researchers in order to conduct a meaningful experiment. So going back to the question, we know that the independent variable would be the high power condition or the low power condition, right? Because the researchers randomly assigned those to the participants, and through those they were able to conclude a valid explanation or conduct an experiment. So for the first bullet point, we will write the independent variable is the manipulation of high power and low power on the participants. Right? So that was the variable that was changed throughout the process, right? For the second bullet point, the question asks, describe how the researchers measured the independent variable. So again, going back to our question, basically the participants were asked to adjust the heights of an electrical graphical image in order to reflect their personal appearances. So basically, the participants, after being assigned a high power or low power, were asked to adjust heights on a graphical image, an avatar, in order to reflect how they feel based on the high power or low power. So for this question, we would write that the researchers asked the participants to adjust heights on an electronic avatar in order to measure the dependent variable, right? That's the way that the researchers were able to tell the results of and significance of their study, right? Now, the third question asks us to create a bar graph illustrating the results of the study and correctly label each axis, right? So the important information for the bar graph is actually the things in quotes, right? The mean of 6 and the mean of 4, right? The standard deviation in our case doesn't really matter because that just tells us the error bars, and the question never asked us for error bars, so we don't necessarily have to include it. But the question does ask us to correctly label each axis, right? So we'll be drawing a graph, an XY graph like this, right? And then on the y axis, we will want to label it height in centimeters, because that is our dependent variable. Dependent variable always goes on the y-axis. And then our independent variable would be the low or high conditions, right? So we will put high and low. And then we would just put like conditions here just to make it more specific. Okay, then the question wants us to create a bar graph. And then the high had a 6, an average of 6. So we would just maybe like do a 6 here, and then for the high we would create this bar, and then maybe a 4 here for the low, right? It says the mean of 4, and we would do this. Right, so that's how you answer this question. As you can tell, we correctly labeled each axis, and we did the bar graph as asked. So as long as you do this, you should be able to get full points. All right, now the fourth question asks us, explain why the researchers can conclude that there is a cause and effect relationship between the independent and dependent variables. So this question in simple words is basically, why do you think the researchers was able to get any significant results from this study, right? And the answer actually is a bit like kind of tricky here, because there really is no relationship just because a person was able to adjust the height on an electronic graphical image, right? But the actual key to this was that the researchers randomly assigned participants to a high power or low power. So if the researchers randomly assigned the participants and there were significance in the results, then obviously we can see that there is a cause and effect relationship between the independent and dependent variables, right? So to answer this question, we would write that since the researchers randomly assigned the independent variable to participants and found meaningful data, then there is, well, we don't have to say that, then it is evident that there is a cause-effect relationship between the independent and dependent variables, right? So because it was randomly assigned, then we can say that there is meaningful data based on the data collected by the researchers. So now let's go on to the fifth question. Explain what statistical significance means in the context of the study, right? So statistical significance basically is another question asking, why is our data significant, or why is our data even valid, right? And the important part of this is that our data has to be proven that it is not random, it did not occur by chance, but there is actually significance to our data, right? So again, because the researchers randomly assigned participants and that the high power conditions reflected a higher self-image, let me just make this a little neater here. Because the high power conditions reflected a taller self-image and the lower power conditions reflected a lower self-image, then it can be assumed or inferred that our data is not occurring by chance or by randomness. Instead, there is actually statistical significance in the context, right? So in order to answer this question, we would write that since the variables, well, not the variables, the independent variable was randomly assigned and the data showed correlation between the two variables, then there is a high chance that the data was not random. Random, which means that the study had statistical significance. Right? So that's how you answer that question. Now, going on to the last question, explain why debriefing would be necessary in the study, right? So basically, the word debriefing means you have to tell the participants what was happening and you have to explain to the participants why you did certain things and explain to them the results, right? So this question is asking us, why is this debriefing or this like telling the participants about our experiment necessary, right? Now, going back, the answer to this question actually lies in the first sentence, right? It says, in a study of power and self-image, participants were not told the true purpose of the study. So basically, the participants didn't even know what was going on. They just knew that they were part of this like business simulation. The question even asked, they believed that they were in a business simulation, right? So because the participants weren't told, then basically the researchers used the method of deception to try to to try to make this experiment fair, but at the same time kind of quote unquote trick the participants into believing that they were in a business simulation, right? So to answer this question correctly, you have to write that a debriefing is necessary because the researchers use the method of deception in order to trick, well, their true purpose was really to make the experiment free, to make the experiment fair. So we would say that a method of deception in order to uh, conduct experiment fairly, right? However, because the researchers did not tell the participants what they were actually measuring, the researchers in the end must debrief the participants in order to prevent any negative impacts, right? So, however, since the researchers conducted such practice, they must debrief the participants participants. Sorry, let me just write that a little bit better. So they must debrief the participants on the experiment in order to minimize can't spell today any negative impacts on the power conditions of the participants. Right. So this concludes our discussion of the 2014 AP Psychology FRQ question 1. Please remember to like and subscribe if you want more content in the future. Thank you so much, and good luck studying for your AP Psychology exam.